Hey, 6th grade, how's it going? Today is June 17th, 2020. Today we're going to be just recording the video for Monday, today, and on Friday, just because the concept is pretty much the same. We're going to be looking at Unit 6 inside of our Prime 6B book, primarily pages 8, 9, and 10, looking at the concept of changing a whole number to a percent, or even a fraction to a percent, and a decimal to a percent to a decimal, and a whole bunch of just conversions like that. So last time we looked at the concept of what percent actually was, we were looking at fractions before, so we're going to be trying to equate the concept of fractions to the concept of percent. We also watched a brain pop video to understand what we could do to convert a percent to a fraction and a decimal. Later on, we'll learn about that. And today we are going to continue with that concept of fractions, but changing fractions to a percentage. So on page 8, it says that you'll have to express a fraction whose denominator is a factor of 100 as a percent. In other words, we are multiplying the fraction by 100%, okay, to try to figure out that as a percent. For example, 1/2 is the same as 50 over 100, or 50/100ths, which can be converted to a percent because 50% is the same as 50 over 100. So let's look at this first example. We have 15 over 75, or 15/75ths, we could say that as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to change that to a percent. Okay. Well, how do we do that? We can take the fraction and we can equate it to some number over 100. Okay. It's going to be the same process every single time. We're going to multiply across, and then we're going to divide by the denominator. So let's multiply across first. 15 times 100 equals 1500, or 1500. And then we're going to divide that product by the denominator of our fraction, which is 75. Okay, 1500 divided by 75. Since I don't have a lot of space, I will do it on the calculator. We have 1500 divided by 75. We have 20. All right, so we can also simplify both those numbers and then make an easier division problem, but just for the sake of this, we're going to just use a calculator. So we have, our answer again was 20%. So 20 over 100 is the same as 20%. Okay, that's our final answer. Let's do letter B. Well, with this fraction, we can simplify if we really want to. I know that 6 and 40 are both even numbers that can be divided by 2. They could be divided by, I think that's probably the only one, right? So let's actually divide both of those by 2 before we even change that to a percent. Divide 6 by 2 and divide 40 by 2. So our new fraction equals 3/20. Okay? There's plenty of ways we can do this to try to figure out it as a percent. We could say 20 is to 100 as 3 is to what? Well, I multiplied 20 times 5 to get to 100. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. So I can multiply 3 times 5 as well. 3 times 5 is 15. So 15 over 100 would equal 15%. Okay? You'll notice that I did each of these problems in two separate ways. All right. The first one, I was able to cross multiply and then divide to find my answer. And the second one, I just equated it to what the fraction would have been over 100. Right. So these are two different methods. You can either do method A, if you prefer, or method B. It's up to you. All right. So we're going to erase everything on the screen and do the next problem. Letter C says 60 over 80. Now again, if you wanted to simplify this fraction, you could easily simplify it. So let's actually do that. I'm going to divide 60 and 80 by, let's see, what is our common factor? We could go by 2. We could go by 20. Let's try by 20. 60 divided by 20. 20, 40, 60 equals 3. And 80 divided by 20 is 20, 40, 60, 80, 4, right? So 3/4 is the same. You'll notice I took this 60 and I changed it to 3. And I took this 80 and I changed it to 4 because I divided both numbers by the same factor, okay? The greatest common factor. This is called the greatest common factor, okay? So 3/4, what is that as a percent? Well, I can equate this to 100 if I really want to. 4 times what number equals 100? Well, that's times 25. So 3 times 25 equals what? 3 times 25 is 75. So 75 over 100 is just 75%. Okay? Let me erase everything on the screen just so I can write that in there. This is going to equal 3/4, which equals 75 over 100, which equals 75%. Okay? If I wanted to check that on the calculator, I could do that. Let's try that. 60 divided by 80 equals 0.75, which is the same as 75%, because I can multiply that by 100 and get 75%. All right, let's do the next problem. This next problem, we could do this as a division problem if we want to. We could simplify it if we really wanted to, or we could just equate it to 100. For example, I can actually divide. So I can divide 700 by 7 to get 100, and then I would just divide 168 by 7 as well to get a smaller number, right? So let's do it on the calculator because I think I'm going to do everything on the calculator today. 168 divided by 7 equals 24. All right, and 24 over 100 equals 24%. Okay, so we have all those percentages now. Those fractions are easily converted into a percent just by doing those different procedures. I've now showed you 3 different ways to figure out how to find a fraction to a percent. Okay, you can divide, like in this case. You can multiply and then divide, or you could simplify and then just change the fraction to a percent, right? So there's lots of different ways you can do that. Let's go to the next problem. Letter E says 7 over 200. I think I'm going to pick the same method that I did before. I think that that's probably going to work for me the best. Oops, can't get rid of this. I know that 7 over 200 is the same as some number over 100. Okay? Sometimes you see an algebraic expression inside of these problems because it's showing you that there's a missing number, right? 200 is equal to 100 if we divide by 2. So I'm going to divide 7 by 2 as well. 7 divided by 2 is not going to be a whole number. It's going to be a decimal or a fraction or a part of a number. If we take 7 divided by 2, that is equal to 3.5. Okay, so this percent is actually a decimal, right? Our final answer is 3.5%. Okay, which is possible. You can take a 3.5% discount on something in a store. For letter F, I'm going to simplify this. Let's take 6 and 40 and divide those both by what greatest common factor? Let's see, we could do 2. We could do, I think 2 is the only one, right? 6 divided by 2 equals 3, and 40 divided by 2 equals 20. Okay, so 3/20ths is my simplified fraction. Well, I know that 20 is a factor of 100, so I can just equate this to 100. 20, I am not writing my numbers very well, am I? 20 times 100, no, I'm sorry, 20 times 5 equals 100. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. So 3 times 5 is going to give us 15. Yeah, seems like I've done this problem already, but it's very similar to one that we did before. I know that 15 over 100 is the same as 15%. Okay, perfect. Let's go to the last problem on this page 8. We have 4 over 125, or you could say 4 125ths. It's kind of a strange fraction. You're not going to find this very often in real life, but that's okay. I wonder if I can divide by 4. No, I don't think 125 is a multiple of 4, so I can't do that. I cannot simplify this, so I'm just going to equate this to 100. Okay, this time I'm going to have to actually cross-multiply and divide, like I did with my first problem. So let's take that. 4 times 100 is 400. And then we're going to divide that by 125. Now with this, it's a little bit difficult to understand because of the fact that we have such a large divisor. So I'm going to divide both sides by 25. Let me just change the color so I can show this to you. Let's change it to like a red. Here we go. I'm going to divide 400 by 25, and I'm going to divide 125 by 25, so I can simplify those numbers and then divide easier. 400 divided by 25, well, if I count by 25s, 25, 50, 75, 100, 125, 150, 175, 200, 225, 250, 275, 300, 325, 350, 375, 400, 16, right? 400 divided by 25 equals 16, and 125 divided by 25 is 5. So what I'm really doing is dividing 16 by 5. All right, I could do that in my brain. 5 goes into 16 3 times, and then we're left over with a remainder of 2, which we're going to bring down a decimal point and a 0. 5 goes into 20. Let's just do it out. Let me try this. I think it's going to be 3.2, but I'm not quite sure. 16 divided by 5 equals 3.2. Yes, perfect. All right, so my final answer is 3.2%. Okay, this number right up here is 3.2. All right, which is going to convert into a percentage because we have it over 100. Let me change my color so we can do the next problem. 3/16, another kind of strange fraction. 3/16 can be equated to a number over 100. I'm going to cross multiply and divide just like before. So we have 3 times 100, which equals 300. And we're going to divide by 16. Divide by that denominator, right? 300 divided by 16. I'll work this one out on the screen right here so you can see it. It's the first problem that we've actually worked out. All right, 16 cannot go into 3. It can go into 30, but just one time, right? So 1 times 16 is 16. 30 minus 16 is 14. Bring down my 0. 16 times what is 140? I wonder. Let's guess. What do you think? Let's guess either 8 or 9. I'm not really sure. Let's try 8. 16 times 8. 16 times 8 is 8. Oops. 8 goes on the bottom. 4 goes on the top. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 128. Yep, that's pretty close. 8 times. 16 times 8 equals 128. Subtract. And we have 12. All right, now we're going to put our imaginary decimal point in there and then also put it up into our answer and bring down our 0. How many times does 16 go into 120? I think probably, let's try, it's got to be less than 8. Let's try 7 times. 16 times 7. 6 times 7 is 42. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 112. Okay, so we have 7 right up here. And 7 times 16 gave us 112, and 120 minus 112 equals 8. I don't have a lot of space right there. So if we continued this, I think we would come up with 18.75. Let me just check that on the calculator just to make sure. We have 300 divided by 16 equals 18.75. Correct. Okay. So here we have, I can't really fit the 5 in there. It won't let me. Here we go. So we have 18.75 over 100, which is going to give us 18.75%. Let me erase this right up here so you guys can see that. Our final percentage is going to be 18.75%. Okay, which is approximately 19%. All right, if we take, let's just see if we can do this on the calculator to check that actually. 3 divided by 16 equals 0.1875. Interesting. So we have the same numbers, and if we multiply that by 100, we're going to come up with 18.75, which is the percentage of the fraction. Okay, so hopefully you understood those concepts. It's a little bit new, not totally new. We're going to just look at a couple of games that you guys can practice that we will play in class, which is, one of them is mathplayground.com, where you're converting fractions to percents. It's just allowing you to understand this concept a little bit more. And then there's a quizzes. Join my quiz. This is the code that we will work on in class. And then here is a Kahoot that we can use to practice in class. What we're going to be doing now is we're going to be converting, let's see, decimals to percents. Now before we do that, I just want you to understand the place values in English is using the following chart. We have the decimal point, and then we have the tenths, we have the hundredths, and the thousandths, right? Let me make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. If we look at this chart, we have tenths 1 place to the right, we have hundredths 2 places to the right, and we have thousandths 3 places to the right of the decimal point, okay? If we're trying to convert a decimal into a percent, we're going to use that second place value, right? That second place value in purple that you see on the screen, okay? Because we know that a percentage is a number out of 100, okay? You'll notice that we can, when we say it, we say hundredths, hundredths. That S is the ending of the word that we're using. Unlike hundreds, which is 2 places to the left, I'm sorry, to the left on the screen. Okay, so just a grammar note, just in English, because sometimes these are difficult to say. All right. When we express a decimal as a percent, we can multiply it by 100. In other words, we can move the decimal point 2 places to the right to get to the percent, right? When we're changing a percent to a decimal, we divide by 100, okay? And then we move the decimal point 2 places to the left, okay? So let's do a couple of examples with that. Here's another way of saying it. When we move the decimal point 2 places to the right, we just add a percentage sign, right? So if we have 0.54, in other words, 54 hundredths, we're going to move that decimal point 2 places to the right and then just add that percentage sign. 0.093 would be 93 thousandths. We move that decimal point 2 places to the right, 1, 2, and that would be 9.3, and we just add our percentage sign, 9.3%. Okay, let's do a couple of examples. Right here I have 0.3 as a percent. So, just like we were told before, we are going to change a decimal to a percent, so we need to move the decimal point 2 places to the right. Okay, so we're going to do that with every single one of these problems. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to move my decimal point 2 spots to the right. 1, 2. I'm going to add an extra 0 right there. And now my new decimal point is right here. So now we have a number as 30. And we just add our percentage sign and we have 30%. okay? So 3/10 changed to 30/100ths, which is the same as 30%. Next one, letter B. We're going to move our decimal point over 2 spots to the right. In other words, we are multiplying by 100, okay? And our new decimal point is going to go right there. In other words, 8.0, which is the same as 8. So we just add our percentage sign, and it's 8%. In other words, 8/100ths is the same as 8%, because this right here is said as 8/100ths. In other words, 8/100ths is 8%. Okay? I'd like you to pause the video, and I'd like you to do these next problems on your own. All right, hopefully you paused the video and you checked out those problems on your own. Letter C, we're just going to move our decimal point over 2 spots to the right. Okay, our new decimal point goes right there. So it's 67.0, which is the same thing as 67. And we just add our percentage sign, so it's 67%. Right? We multiplied that by 100, and by multiplying it by 100, we got 67%. If I wanted to check that on the calculator, I could do that. 0.67. You'll notice that the calculator automatically added that 0 times 100 equals 67%. This one's a little bit more complicated because our decimal point is going to stay in our problem. We're going to move the decimal point over 2 spots. Our new number is 0.4, which we're going to keep as 0.4, but add the percentage sign. So 0.4% is the same thing as 4/10, hundredths, thousandths. All right, 4/1000ths is the same as 0.4%. Okay, 4/1000ths, which is the same as this, right, equals 0.4%. Okay, good. The rest of the problems on this page are the same, exactly the same. You're just going to move the decimal point over 2 spots, which I can quickly do. So 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So we are left with 0.5. We are left with 2.5. We are left with 38.5 and 40.5. And I'm just going to add my percentage sign. Okay, you cannot forget to add that percentage sign. 0.5%, 2.5%, 38.5%, and 40.5%. All right, cool. So we've just understood how to change a decimal to a percent, which is relatively important. You can do it on the calculator. All you really have to do is just move that decimal point over 2 spots to the right and add your symbol. It's pretty simple. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to understand how to change a percent to a decimal. All right, to convert a percent to a decimal, you're going to move the decimal point not to the right, but to the left. Now, why is that? It's because you are taking that number 5, for example, in this first one, over 100, and you are trying to make the number smaller, all right? Because you're dividing that number, that 5, by 100. Okay, so the number is getting smaller. In other words, your decimal point needs to go to the left this time. Okay, you can see a couple of examples on the screen, and we're going to do a couple of examples in class. So, since we're taking these percentages, right, and we're trying to convert them into decimals, we're making that number smaller. Your number is always going to be smaller. And you're going to move the decimal point to the left. Okay? So if I take 2% and I want to change that to a decimal, I'm going to take 2 and I'm going to move my decimal point over 2 spots to the left. So 2 is the same as 2.0, right? And if I move my decimal point over 2 spots to the left, 1, 2, that means I'm going to need to put my place value of 0 right there, and my new decimal point is right here. So my new number is 0, which is optional, 0.02. Okay, that's my new decimal. I changed this percent to a decimal by moving my decimal point over 2 spots to the left. Let's do the same thing in the number letter B, right? 80% is the same as 80.0%. I'm going to move my decimal point over 1, 2 spots to the left, right there, and here's my imaginary 0. So my new number is 0.8. You could also say it's 0.80, 0.8000, it doesn't matter. Okay, so my new decimal is 0.8. 80% is the same as 0.8, and I can show you that on the calculator, right? We have 80 divided by 100, which is the same as 80%, and it's going to give me 0.8, okay? So we're understanding the relationship between these. Let's do the letter C. Move my decimal point over 2 spots to the left, 1, 2. So my new number is 0, which is optional, 0.375. Okay, my decimal point went away. That first decimal point went completely away. So there's my new decimal point. My decimal, all right? Pause the video and do this last problem. All right, hopefully you paused it. If you move your decimal point over 2 spots to the left, then you're going to come up with 0.456 as your decimal. All right, good. Let's go to letter E. I think these ones are pretty simple, pretty self-explanatory. I am going to just quickly do the answers to show you. If you'd like to pause the video, go ahead and pause it, do these questions, and then check your answers at the end. .8 as a percent, as a decimal, I'm sorry, is, move a decimal point over 2 spots, so we have 0.108. Moving decimal point over 2 spots, we have 0.207. Move a decimal point over 2 spots, leave my open space for that 0, so it's 0.069 and 1, 2. So we have 0.0. This time we have 2 zeros, 004. Let's check that last one on the calculator just to make sure. We have 0.4%, right? So I am dividing that by 100, and that is 0.004. Okay, with each one of these decimals, you're dividing them by 100, and you're coming up with a smaller decimal. Okay, you'll notice we do not have the symbol of percent anymore. All right, good. So that's a quick understanding of how to change percents to a decimal, how to change previously, how to change other numbers, decimals to percents. If you don't understand this concept, I would watch the video one more time or check to see if you can understand it using one of the resources that Mr. Joseph has shared with you guys. I hope that after this video you have understood how to change fractions to percents, decimals to percents, and percents to decimals. If you can't, definitely watch the video one more time and reach out to Mr. Joseph to get some more help. So other than that, we will see you guys later.